When a bank manager turned away a man wearing a MAGA hat, she never imagined the man she rejected was one of the most influential people on the planet. What unfolded next stunned the entire town and left her utterly speechless. The clock struck 11:45 a.m., and the usual buzz of Waco's First Horizon Bank carried on as customers moved in and out, conducting their everyday business. Brenda Hartwell, the bank manager, sat behind her desk reviewing loan applications with practiced ease. A woman of over 2 decades of experience, Brenda was known for her strong-willed, no-nonsense approach. But today, the air in the bank felt heavier than usual. A man walked in, standing a little over 6 feet, his red baseball cap bold with white lettering, "Make America Great Again." It wasn't the first time Brenda had seen someone wear the hat. She had seen it stir controversy before, sparking heated debates. She gritted her teeth as she watched the man scan the room, a slight air of defiance around him. The bank was a place of business, not politics, and she wasn't about to let anything disrupt the calm order she had worked so hard to maintain. Watching closely, she whispered to her assistant manager, Diane, "Let's not deal with any trouble." When his turn came, the man approached her desk with a calm but assertive step. "Good afternoon," he said politely, placing his briefcase on the counter. "I need to make a withdrawal." Brenda's gaze shifted to the hat. The sight of it sent a chill through her. There had been a scene just last month over a political argument, and she wasn't about to let history repeat itself. "Do you have your account details and ID?" she asked coldly, trying to maintain professionalism, despite the rush of emotions. The man nodded, handing over the documents. Brenda skimmed over them. The name didn't ring any bells. Still, the hat loomed large in her mind, clouding her judgment. She slid the papers back to him, her decision made before even considering the rest. "I'm sorry," she said curtly. "We won't be able to process your request today." The man blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me? Is there a problem with my account?" No problem," Brenda replied dismissively, her voice hardening. "But we reserve the right to refuse service if we feel it's warranted." Her words hung in the air and a collective gasp spread through the room. The man stood frozen, his calm demeanor now visibly strained. He tilted his head slightly as if pondering her decision. "What exactly do you mean by warranted?" he asked, the hint of tension creeping into his voice. Brenda shrugged, dismissing him. "If you like, you can take your business to another branch." Without another word, the man picked up his documents and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving a silence that was thick with confusion and disbelief. Brenda remained seated, her gaze fixed on the screen in front of her, determined to remain unaffected. The room slowly came alive with murmurs. Some customers exchanged knowing looks, while others questioned what had just transpired. But Brenda didn't engage. She couldn't. She was sure of her decision, or at least that's what she told herself. Diane leaned over, her voice low and concerned. "Do you think that was really necessary?" Brenda sighed, her voice tight. "We can't afford another scene like last month. This is a business, not a political stage." Outside, the man paused, his hand hovering near the brim of his hat. But after a brief hesitation, he adjusted his cap and walked away, leaving only a quiet tension in his wake. The rest of the day passed with only the faintest trace of the encounter lingering in the air. Customers left, their murmurs of curiosity and confusion fading into the background. As Brenda locked her office door that evening, she told herself it was over. No one would think twice about the incident. After all, what could a single man in a red hat really do? But Brenda was wrong. The next morning, the door opened again at precisely 10:30 a.m. She barely had time to look up before she saw him, the same man, walking through the entrance. But this time, there was something different. He wasn't alone. 2 sharply dressed men flanked him, their presence imposing, their suits immaculate. And the man in the red hat? His posture was different. He exuded a quiet but undeniable authority. Brenda froze. "Is that?" Diane whispered, her voice trembling. "That's Elon Musk." Brenda blinked, stunned. "What? No way!" Diane nodded, her eyes wide with disbelief. "That's him. The Tesla guy. The SpaceX billionaire." The realization hit Brenda like a punch to the gut. The man she had just refused service to was none other than one of the most powerful and influential figures in the world. Elon Musk, quiet, composed, and utterly unfazed by her rejection. If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time. Brenda's stomach dropped. She stared at the man, her mind racing. Could it really be him? The cap, the briefcase, the unassuming demeanor, it didn't fit the image of one of the world's most recognizable figures. But as he approached, the resemblance became undeniable. She suddenly felt lightheaded. The room fell silent as Elon stopped at Brenda's desk. He removed his cap slowly, revealing the familiar face that had graced countless news articles and interviews. His gaze locked onto hers. The silence was deafening. "Good morning," Elon said, his tone measured and polite. "I'd like to have a word." Brenda's throat tightened, but she forced a professional smile. "Mr. Musk," he held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Let's not pretend this didn't happen," he said calmly. "Yesterday I came in as a regular customer and you refused to serve me. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to talk about why." Brenda felt every set of eyes in the room on her. She struggled to find words, but none came. Elon didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone demanded attention. "I believe we all make judgments," Elon continued, addressing not just Brenda but the room. "It's human nature. But sometimes those judgments say more about us than they do about the people we judge." He placed the cap on the desk, the bold white letters facing outward. This hat is just fabric and thread, but to some, it's a symbol. To others, it's a target. Yesterday, it was enough to deny me service not because of my actions, but because of what you assumed about me. Brenda's face flushed with heat. She wanted to speak, to explain herself, but Elon pressed on. "I'm not here to shame anyone," he said, his voice softening. "I'm here to remind all of us that the world is more complicated than it seems. We don't always know someone's story. We don't know their intentions. And if we let our assumptions guide us, we risk missing out on something or someone extraordinary." The room was utterly silent. Even the sound of the printers in the back had stopped. Brenda felt as though the ground beneath her had vanished. She couldn't meet his gaze, but the moment wasn't over. Elon had one more surprise up his sleeve. Elon's words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Brenda sat frozen, the weight of every stare in the room pressing down on her. She finally managed to whisper, "I didn't mean." Elon raised a hand gently. "I know," he said, his tone firm but not harsh. "Most of the time, people don't mean to judge. It's reflexive. But what happens afterward, that's what defines us." He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping the room. Customers and employees alike stood in stunned silence, some clutching their phones, too awestruck to record the moment. His eyes landed on a young teller near the back, who looked as though she wanted to disappear behind her desk. "What's your name?" Elon asked, his voice carrying across the room but remaining calm. "Well, Lauren," the teller stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Lauren, what would you do if someone came in wearing something you didn't agree with? Would you judge them by their clothing? Or would you take the time to understand who they are?" Lauren hesitated, glancing nervously at Brenda before answering. I try to treat them the same as anyone else." Elon nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "That's a good answer," he said. "It's harder in practice, though, isn't it?" The tension in the room was palpable. Brenda wanted nothing more than for the moment to end, but Elon wasn't finished. He turned back to her, his tone softening even further. "Brenda, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're someone who, like many of us, acted on an assumption. But assumptions can be dangerous. They can hurt people. They can close doors we didn't even realize were open." Brenda's voice cracked as she finally spoke. "I didn't mean to offend you. I thought I was protecting the bank." Elon tilted his head slightly. Protecting it from what? A customer trying to withdraw his own money? The room felt thick with tension as Elon Musk's words hung in the air. "Yesterday, the message I received was, 'You don't belong here,'" he said, his voice calm, but heavy with meaning. "And I imagine I'm not the only one who's ever felt that way in this bank." His gaze cut through the room, locking eyes with Brenda, whose heart sank as the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about a red hat. This was about everyone who had ever felt judged, excluded, or dismissed in ways both big and small. A soft murmur rippled through the crowd. Some customers exchanged uneasy glances, others shifted in their seats, but all were aware of the weight of Elon's words. Brenda felt the walls closing around her as her face flushed crimson with shame. She had acted out of fear of confrontation, of stirring up division, but in doing so, she had inadvertently compounded it. Elon continued, his voice steady. "The good news is we all have the power to do better. We all have the choice in how we treat each other." For a brief moment, a flicker of hope ignited within Brenda. Maybe this moment of humiliation could spark change, a better way forward. But then Elon did something that no one saw coming. He straightened up, his hands smooth and deliberate as he gestured to one of the men in suits standing beside him. The man stepped forward and handed Elon a sleek black folder. With a single fluid motion, Elon opened it and pulled out a document. "This," he said, holding up the paper for all to see, "is a donation pledge. I'm contributing $500,000 to the Waco Community Relief Fund." Gasps filled the room. Brenda's heart stopped. The money wasn't the point. It was the message behind it. "This isn't about me," Elon continued, his tone unwavering. "This is about this community and the simple fact that we all have the power to make a difference no matter what we are or where we come from." He slid the paper toward Brenda, his eyes locked on hers. "I trust you'll make sure this reaches where it's needed." Brenda's hand shook as she reached for the document, her mind reeling. She had no words, none that could undo what had just happened. Elon Musk had just turned her mistake into a lesson for everyone in the room. Elon didn't wait for a response. He gave a small, knowing smile and turned to leave, his two companions following closely behind. As he walked out, the room erupted into a buzz of hushed voices. Brenda was left in stunned silence, the weight of what she had just witnessed settling over her like a dark cloud. Diane leaned in, her voice barely audible. "That was Elon Musk," she whispered. "And he just donated $500,000. Brenda nodded weakly, unable to process the magnitude of it all. Her phone buzzed incessantly as calls and emails from corporate poured in, demanding an explanation. By the time she left work, the story had already spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with hashtags, and news outlets headlined with headlines like "Elon Musk calls out bias at local bank, donates $500,000 to community fund." The Waco Community Relief Fund, a struggling local organization, was suddenly flooded with inquiries about the donation. For years, they had operated on small contributions. Now their funding woes were over. The money would change lives, open doors, and perhaps, just maybe, start a much-needed conversation about the true cost of exclusion. As Brenda stared at the donation pledge in her hand, she couldn't help but reflect on Elon's final words, "Just let your actions speak." She had never imagined that one simple decision could spiral into something so transformative. But she knew now she would never make that mistake again. The charity's director, a woman named Evelyn Parker, called a press conference to express her gratitude. "This donation is transformative," she told reporters, her voice thick with emotion. "It will allow us to expand our program, support more families, and make a lasting impact in our community. We're incredibly grateful to Mr. Musk for his generosity and his belief in the power of kindness." Back at the bank, Brenda struggled to navigate the fallout. Some of her regular customers avoided her gaze, while others offered quiet words of support. One elderly man, a longtime client named Mr. Hargrove, stopped by her desk after making his transaction. "You made a mistake, Brenda," he said kindly but firmly, "but we all do. What matters is what you do next." Brenda nodded, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I know, I never thought something like this could happen here." Mr. Hargrove smiled faintly. "Life has a funny way of humbling us. Use it as a lesson." Determined to make amends, Brenda reached out to the Waco Community Relief Fund and volunteered to help coordinate the disbursement of the funds. She also held a meeting with her staff, openly addressing what had happened and encouraging everyone to reflect on their own biases. "We can't let our assumptions guide us," she told them. "We have to be better for ourselves and for our customers." The small town incident soon snowballed into a national conversation. People across the country debated the morality of the situation, questioning how often they themselves might judge others based on appearances. Social media was ablaze with opinions, with some praising Musk's calm approach and others condemning the bank's initial actions. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. The moment had sparked a deeper conversation, one that extended far beyond the walls of the First Horizon Bank. The days following Elon Musk's visit were a whirlwind for the First Horizon Bank in the town of Waco. News crews stationed themselves outside the branch, eager to capture the humbling of the bank manager or to interview customers who had witnessed the moment. Brenda became an unwilling focal point, her name plastered across headlines and social media threads. But as the noise grew louder, so did the conversations it sparked. The local community buzzed with introspection. Town hall meetings and casual gatherings saw people discussing not just the bank incident but their own judgments and biases. Church leaders used the story as an example during sermons, urging congregants to look beyond surface differences. Teachers wove the incident into classroom discussions, challenging students to think critically about assumptions. For Brenda, the experience became deeply personal. She spent countless evenings replaying the moment Elon stood in front of her, hand in hand, forcing her to confront the biases she'd never realized she carried. She didn't just feel embarrassed, she felt transformed. Determined to grow, she enrolled in diversity and inclusion workshops hosted by the bank's corporate office and encouraged her staff to do the same. The Waco Community Relief Fund flourished with the attention and influx of support inspired by Musk's actions. Other local businesses and individuals began contributing to the fund, many citing the lesson they'd learned from the incident. In just a few weeks, the charity had doubled its donor base, allowing it to roll out new programs, including one aimed at financial literacy for low-income families, ironically in partnership with the bank. Elon Musk, for his part, declined to comment further on the incident. When pressed by reporters at a Tesla event, he simply smiled and said, "I think the moment spoke for itself. Let's move on." But the ripple effects of his actions continued. The incident became a case study in corporate training seminars and was featured in countless articles and opinion pieces, each exploring its deeper implications. Some argued it was a testament to the power of second chances. Others saw it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of bias. For Brenda, it was both. She emerged from the experience more self-aware and more empathetic. She'd learned the hard way that leadership wasn't just about enforcing policies, it was about setting an example, even in the smallest interactions. Her staff noticed the change, and so did the customers. One afternoon, as she helped an elderly woman navigate an online banking app, Brenda heard a familiar voice behind her. "Excuse me, Brenda." She turned and saw Mr. Hargrove, the longtime client who had offered her words of wisdom after the incident. He handed her a small envelope. "Just thought you'd like to know," he said with a wink before walking out. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. "Pride may break us, but humility can rebuild. You've done well." Brenda smiled, a sense of gratitude washing over her. She'd been given the chance to rebuild not just her reputation, but her values, and she intended to make the most of it. Because sometimes it's the moments we least expect that teach us the most important lessons. The encounter between Elon Musk and the bank manager serves